4,500 years ago, on a stretch of desert plateau outside modern Cairo, a civilization did something that still leaves engineers scratching their heads today. They stacked over 2 million blocks of stone, some weighing as much as 9 elephants, into a shape so precise, so mathematically perfect, that for 38 centuries it was the tallest man-made structure on Earth. No cranes, no wheels, at least not for the heavy lifting, no iron tools, just bronze chisels, wooden sledges, rope, water, and an almost unbelievable amount of coordinated human effort. This is the story of how the Great Pyramid of Giza and its sister pyramids actually got built. Not aliens, not lost technology, just one of the greatest feats of organization in human history. Let's set the scene. Around 2560 BCE, Egypt was ruled by the pharaoh Khufu, second king of the fourth dynasty. Egyptians believed their pharaoh was a living god, and when he died, he needed a monument that would launch him into the afterlife, a resurrection machine, essentially, built from stone. That monument became the Great Pyramid, 481 feet tall at completion, built from an estimated 2.3 million blocks, with a base so level that it varies by less than an inch across its entire 13-acre footprint. For comparison, that's a level of precision many modern buildings would struggle to match without laser tools. And here's something that surprises most people. This wasn't built by slaves whipped into submission, as Hollywood loves to suggest. Archaeological digs at Giza in the 1990s uncovered entire villages, bakeries, breweries, medical facilities, and worker cemeteries that tell a very different story. These were paid laborers, farmers who worked on the pyramid during the Nile's annual flood season, when their fields were underwater anyway. Skeletons show healed broken bones, meaning injured workers were cared for, not discarded. This was a national project, closer to a modern government infrastructure program than a slave camp. So where did 2.5 million blocks of stone come from? Most of the pyramid's core is made of local limestone, quarried right there at Giza, just a short distance from the Bill site. Workers used copper chisels and wooden mallets to score lines into the rock face, then hammered wooden wedges into the cracks and soaked them with water. As the wood swelled, it split the stone along controlled fracture lines, a simple but brilliant use of physics. The gleaming white outer casing stones, the ones that would have made the pyramid shine like a mirror in the desert sun, came from a finer limestone quarried across the Nile at Tura, and the massive granite blocks used in the internal burial chamber, some weighing over 25 tons, were hauled nearly 500 miles down the river from Aswan. That granite alone tells you this wasn't a local project. It was a logistics operation spanning the length of the country. This is the part that fascinates engineers most. How do you move a 2.5-ton block or 25-ton one without wheels or pulleys strong enough for the job? The answer, confirmed by tomb paintings, ancient tools found at the site, and a remarkable 2014 physics study out of the University of Amsterdam, comes down to sledges and sand. Workers loaded blocks onto wooden sledges and dragged them across the desert. Dry sand piles up and bunches in front of a sledge, creating huge friction. But when workers wet the sand just in front of the sledge's path, it changed everything. Wet sand grains cling together and create a firmer, smoother surface, cutting the friction dramatically and roughly halving the number of people needed to pull the same load. Egyptian art actually shows a person standing at the front of these sledges, pouring water onto the sand, which puzzled historians for decades until this study explained exactly why. For the heaviest blocks, teams of dozens of workers hauled in unison, often to the rhythm of chanting or drumming to keep everyone pulling at the same moment, something like a very literal team building exercise, except the stakes were a national monument. Moving blocks across flat desert is one challenge. Lifting them into place, layer after layer, as the pyramid rises, that's the real mystery. And honestly, it's the one Egyptologists still debate. The leading theory involves ramps. As the pyramid grew taller, workers likely built ramps of mud brick, packed rubble, and gypsum plaster, dragging blocks up the incline on sledges, just like on flat ground. But a single straight ramp, long enough to reach 480 feet, would need to be over a mile long. That's an enormous, wasteful structure. So most modern Egyptologists favor a spiral ramp theory, a ramp that wound around the outside of the pyramid as it rose, using the structure itself as scaffolding. There's also a fascinating alternative proposed by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, an internal spiral ramp tunneling up through the pyramid's core rather than wrapping around the outside, which would explain some strange internal cavities discovered by cosmic ray scanning technology in recent years. Scientists literally used subatomic particles called muons, which pass through stone and get absorbed differently by empty space, to peer inside the pyramid without moving a single block. In 2017, the scan revealed a previously unknown void above the Grand Gallery, roughly the size of a passenger jet, proof that even now this monument is still giving up secrets. Whichever ramp system was used, one thing is clear: this required extraordinary planning. As the ramp rose, so did the labor cost, meaning the ancient Egyptians had to solve a logistics equation just as complex as anything a modern construction firm faces. Here's what really separates the pyramids from being just a big pile of rocks: the astonishing precision involved. The Great Pyramid's four sides are aligned to true north, with an accuracy of within a tenth of a degree. Egyptian surveyors likely achieved this using simple tools: a merket, essentially a plumb line and sighting instrument used to track stars, particularly circumpolar stars that never dip below the horizon, to establish true north with remarkable accuracy. Leveling the base was done using water channels cut into the bedrock, letting gravity itself define a perfectly horizontal reference line. The same principle a spirit level uses today, just executed at a massive scale. And behind all of this sat an administrative machine most people don't picture when they think ancient Egypt: scribes tracking food deliveries, papyri recording worker shifts and quotas, organized labor gangs with names like Friends of Khufu competing against each other, and a supply chain stretching from the Nile Delta to Aswan. A 2013 discovery of papyri at the Red Sea port of Wadi al-Jarf, the diary of an official named Merir, actually documents, in his own handwriting, hauling limestone blocks by boat up the Nile to Giza for the pyramid's construction. It's about as close to a first-hand eyewitness account of the build as archaeology has ever found. So when you put it all together, quarrying, water-assisted sledge transport, ramps, precision surveying, and a nationwide logistics and labor system, you get an answer far more impressive than any ancient alien theory could offer. The pyramids weren't built by some lost, mysterious civilization or outside help. They were built by tens of thousands of ordinary Egyptians, farmers, quarrymen, bakers, and administrators, organized at a scale the world had never seen before. It took an estimated 20 years to build the Great Pyramid, using a workforce that peaked at around 20,000 to 30,000 people at any given time, not the hundreds of thousands ancient Greek historians once claimed, but still a staggering mobilization for the Bronze Age. And maybe that's the real wonder of the pyramids. Not that they required something superhuman, but that they were entirely human. built with sand, water, rope, patience, and an extraordinary amount of shared purpose. 4,500 years later, they're still standing. A monument not just to a pharaoh, but to what people can build together when they organize on a scale big enough to match their ambition.